flames of your city's lights. Stand the heroes waiting for your cries. So many times you did not bring this on yourself. When that moment finally comes, I'll be there to help. And on that day, when you need your brothers and sisters to care, I'll be right here. Citizen soldiers, holding the light for the ones that we guide from the dark of despair. Standing on guard for the ones that we shelter. We'll always be ready, because we will always be there. When there are people crying in the streets, when they're starving for a meal to eat, when they simply need a place to make their beds, right here underneath my wing, you can rest your head. On that day, when you need your brothers and sisters to care, I'll be right here. Citizen soldiers, holding the light for the ones that we guide from the dark of despair. Standing on guard for the ones that we shelter. We'll always be ready, because we will always be Hope and pray that you never need me, but rest assured I will not let you down. I'll walk beside you, but you may not see me. The strongest among you may not wear a crown. On that day when you need your brothers and sisters to care, I'll be right here. On that day when you don't have the strength for the burden you bear, I'll be right here. Citizen soldiers, holding the light for the ones that we guide from the dark of despair. Standing on guard for the ones that we shelter. We'll always be ready, because we will always be there.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for our weekly news recap behind enemy lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. Alongside me is my co-host and producer, Fox Trevize. How are you, buddy?
Pretty good. Pretty good. How are you doing today?
I'm hot.
Wow.
As in, the temperature is
Man,
hot.
That is, whew. You guys heard it here first. Breaking news, apparently. You guys were all wondering what was underneath that mask. We now know. It's probably sweat.
It's the hotness. I'm sure that it's a good mental picture. Anyway, so thank you for everyone who makes this show possible, because this great content we're demonstrating to you right now, it's supported by you.
It's only going to get better, too. I mean,
if you say so. So the people you can blame for this content include Ori, Main, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke, Thundra, Erican, who is female, and the White Lion. Also, a special thank you to Timberwolf, who for all of his donations and for boosting us on the Discord. If you guys don't donate to us financially, you can still support us and make this madness happen by simply liking, sharing, and subscribing. It'll make us happy and make the SJWs cry. So there's a benefit to it. Also,
and
the
if
benefit
you
is
really like it, share it with your enemies as well.
I love that.
I don't know why. I just felt channeled old Dyer there. Classic Dyer.
It's still on the outros of the edited videos. In any case, we got a lot of stories for you. A lot of them are shorter and more funny than usual because we only got 16 pages out of 21. But I'm sure we'll find a way to make 16 pages into 21 or 40.
Yeah, we'll see if I always know it's gonna be that kind of show because it's like that every show when we'll be not even halfway through the first story and all of a sudden it's 10:50 and I'm like, hey, let's go. Come on, finish up. So, but did we have? Oh, we didn't have any funny videos today. That's a shame. I'm sure some of these stories will be funny though. So, our first story is worldwide pandemic. Adam Schiff is most affected.
Poor him.
Poor guy. So, while a record number of Americans are losing their jobs, I believe the total count is over 30 million now. It's pretty wild. Record number of losing their jobs, record number standing in food lines, and increasingly a record number being harassed by senseless lockdown regimes. While all of us are enduring that, California Representative Adam Schiff has been the most affected. You lost your job? You stand in a food line? No. Adam Schiff, far worse off than you are. Before Corona Chan stole all his limelight, Schiff was a superstar for the Orange Man Bad movement. He was at the forefront of each impeachment saga, especially including the Ukraine nonsense from most recently. Which, the most recent one was the Ukraine scandal about 75 years ago. Approximately. As we all know, it's February 98th right now. For nearly 2 years, Schiff had made an appearance on legacy cable news networks nearly every single day. I believe during 2017, out of the 365 days of 2017, Schiff appeared on CNN approximately 320 times, if I remember what that was the account of it. And then, so that was before the Ukraine scandal. But during the Ukraine hearings, Schiff himself was being televised for 12, sometimes 16 hours a day for several months in a row. It was I remember watching some of that, and I've never been the same since. He even took some of that time to read aloud some of his personal fan fiction that he had written about the bad orange man, Trump. This is all going somewhere, I swear.
Okay. I believe you, but I think that the reason why he's showing up again in the media is because he actually will literally die or cease to exist if he isn't on the news.
Yeah, I know, that's the punchline. Thank you for bringing that up early. That's like the punchline of this. Just read your lines.
So after impeachment failed in a spectacular fashion in February, the news cycle quickly moved on to the China virus crisis, and Schiff has barely been seen or thought of since. Naturally, this was unbearable to him, and he has been doing his best to get back in the headlines ever since. Let's watch this video.
Let me see here. There we go. I was not as ready with this as I should have been. This was my story, too.
Can't believe we thought of the same joke.
I can. I'm just unsurprised that you didn't read it beforehand again.
Like you read all of my stories.
Yes. So this was Schiff trying to get back into the news cycle this week. We'll take a look at what he had to say, because obviously, as Dyer said twice, him not being the center of attention is just unbearable.
But there's one thing that really I have to say haunts me from that trial. And
we don't have the video?
You're not getting the. I'm playing the video. You don't have the audio. I'll share it to you. So just hold on a second. Very well prepared today.
But there's one thing that really I have to say haunts me from that trial, and it was before that snippet that you showed, where we knew we had to answer the question to the senators. Okay, essentially, House managers, you proved him guilty. Does he really need to be removed? After all, we have an election in 9 months. How much damage could he really do? And we posed that question to the Senate, and we answered it by saying that he could do an awful lot of damage. But frankly, Chris, I don't think we had any idea how much damage he would go on to do in the months ahead. There are 50,000 Americans now who are dead, in significant part because of his incompetence, because of his inability to think beyond himself and put the country first. I don't think we would have ever anticipated that his brand of narcissism and his brand of incompetence, sometimes his brand of malevolence, would be so fatal to the American people. But probably...
So Schiff is saying, during during the impeachment hearings, they said, we got an election in 9 months. Why don't we just wait till then? How much damage could Trump do between now and election time? And Schiff says, well, we said at the time quite a lot. We just never imagined that he would murder 50,000 Americans with coronavirus. Get fucked, you idiot.
Wow. So he's going to try to pin the deaths from a act of nature, a virus that was created by the incompetence of Chinese lab workers. Let's say at the best interpretation of it, or just uncleanly environment in China, possibly also, and then was ignored by people like him. Right? He's in Congress too, and he makes laws too. He has the power to have raised the alarm, but we heard nothing from Schiff's crystal ball saying, "Hey, we should be doing something about this virus." Maybe we should have that on the agenda instead of trying to do an impeachment hearing that we know will fail because we have no evidence.
Well, no. See, you're missing his point. The point that he was making was that he saw this coming, that this is why we were going to impeach him. This is why Trump needed to be impeached, because had Trump been impeached, 50,000 Americans would still be alive today, Dyer. That's what he said.
He knew, just like Pelosi, right? So
Yeah,
she knew
just like Pelosi did.
Just like Pelosi. They all knew ahead of time, but they didn't think to warn anyone or, I don't know, be prepared in any possible way. In fact, their way of responding to the crisis was when Trump, the only person to do anything to respond to the virus, even though he could have done more, he was the only one in America. And they criticized him, calling him racist, or in the case of Biden, a hysterical xenophobe for doing anything to respond to the virus. And meanwhile, we have Pelosi and a bunch of people on the left in Congress saying that we should not be socially distant, that we shouldn't be worried about the virus, that don't be prepared. It's a nothing burger. But they definitely changed their tunes like a week later and want us to pretend like we didn't know what they were saying the week prior. They want to rewrite history, try to make it so Trump, the only one who responded, is now the bad guy. They call him racist, but no, he actually didn't do enough. Well, you guys didn't do anything, so anything he did is way more than what you did.
Well, I mean, Schiff is actually claiming that Trump killed these people, that these people were killed through Trump's negligence. That's what.
Yes,
that's an incredible thing to say. Jeez.
I think the word "incredible" is a great word for this. There's no credibility to the argument.
Yes, it is uncredible. But yeah, it's I just, man, this guy really thinks highly of himself. Like we kind of started off with, though, he was just in the news cycle for so long. He had so much of a power trip. I mean, while he was doing the impeachment, he was leveraging intelligence assets against his fellow congressmen, pulling their phone records, tapping their phone calls, actually, reading their text messages of fellow congressmen. He was, again, on the news all day, every day for years at this point. And then, he just hasn't been being paid attention to. So how does he know to get back into the media? Well, he knows he just needs to say the most sensational thing possible, which is that, again, Trump killed. There are 50,000 Americans now dead because the Republicans wouldn't vote to impeach. That's the other thing, too, is he's saying, not only did Trump kill these people, the Republicans are culpable in it because they blocked impeachment. Had they only impeached Trump, again, had Trump only been impeached, 50,000 Americans would be alive today.
You got to ask yourself, what has he done in any recent history that's been good for the country. What benefit has he brought? He's wasted a lot of money and a lot of time. He's actually filled in space in Congress that could have been used to actually do good things for the American people. I think that stuff like this, I don't think people are dumb enough to fall for it, honestly. This is so blatantly stupid. And he's trying to win political points here. I know every story somehow must be bad for Trump, but everyone is going to realize that you're a one-trick pony. You only can have one opinion about every situation, and no way, even if Trump cured cancer, they would still have a problem with it.
Well,
so when you have someone who's
Trump's not going to cure cancer. That's Biden. You're mixing them up. Remember, Biden's got the cure for cancer.
He does, but he's not sharing it. He's bogarting that shit right there.
You gotta elect Biden to get the cure.
Right, but so if Trump released it, he would have stole it from Biden. See, that's the Orange Man bad narrative.
Exactly. So, would you say that claiming that there'd be 50,000 Americans alive today had Trump been impeached, would you say that is factual information?
No, actually.
No, it's not. Well, what should we do with not factual information being spread around online? I know what we think we should do, which is,
mock it.
Yeah, mock it, meme it, make fun of whoever's posting it, but it is everyone's right to do so. What do you think Schiff thinks should happen to misinformation about the coronavirus?
Schiff thinks that any information that he deems to be wrong, meaning based on his opinions and bias, that it should be removed from the internet, and whatever platform you're using, you should be banned from it for having posted information that he disagrees with. So if we're applying his standard to this situation, well, he would not be able to be wouldn't be able to work for Congress, I guess. So this week, Schiff also sent a letter to Google, YouTube, and Twitter urging the platforms to explicitly notify users who have engaged with misinformation, and by his definition, about the coronavirus. He requested that these platforms link the World Health Organization at a minimum through, though, in his opinion, as he wrote in his letter, the best protection is removing or downgrading harmful content before users engage with it. Someone sure is missing that point. Someone sure is missing that power trip that impeachment gave him.
Yeah, so he's sitting there sending letters off to Google and YouTube and Twitter, saying, "Hey, as the head of the Intelligence Committee, as a congressman, as somebody who's got a lot of political infamy, I don't know if I call it clout, certainly well known though. I'm saying you companies, you need to be doing this." And then I think implied in that is, well, he's head of some of the biggest, most powerful agents or councils that we have in or committees that we have in Congress, and maybe Google gets themselves pulled into another another one of those lovely congressional hearings, probably YouTube and Facebook as well, and they don't want that, but that's why Schiff is sending that letter. He's sending that letter with a kind of an implied veiled threat there that, hey, you need to be suppressing non-authoritative sources. You need to be removing them before people even see them. But this kind of information, him saying, well, there are 5,000 or 50,000 Americans dead who would otherwise be alive had Trump been impeached. I wonder where that would rank at in his determination of false information about the coronavirus.
Pretty high.
And it's interesting that he wants to quote out have them quote out the World Health Organization.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. If you're talking about trying to ban misinformation, why would you then link the king of misinformation on that topic as the authoritative source?
I mean, what's more dangerous? Some Becky account tweeting about 5G causing coronavirus, or the World Health Organization stating something that is plausibly a fact in their capacity as experts on the subject that will be later found out to be completely false. I think it's far more dangerous to have the World Health Organization doing that, because when you see the 5G crap from Becky on Twitter, you're like, that's funny, but I know what that is. Like, I know that that's fake. or I might engage with it for like the lulz. But when the World Health Organization it says, in their capacity as experts, things that could plausibly be true. I mean, the fact that when they said that the coronavirus wasn't transmitted, by person-to-person contact, that could have been true. That is a characteristic that a virus could have. We just didn't know if the coronavirus had it or not. The World Health Organization turned out to be very, very wrong about that, and there was information at the time that would have disproved that. But so what? We zoom back 2 months with this, and anybody on YouTube saying, well, there's evidence of person-to-person contact. Well, they're not they're banned now because the World Health Organization said that there wasn't. In Shift's case, go back 2 months ago and say, well, if we impeach Trump now, we'll save 50,000 lives. That'd be better than that'd be a much better way than the lockdown. Yeah, I mean, I wish Schiff was right. I would have much rather have impeached Trump than do this to the economy. But if that's all it took.
Yeah, it's funny though. The people who predicted the damage to the economy were pretty spot on as far as the job loss, right? They predicted up to 35 million, right?
I don't know if that's like a hard prediction. Hey, we're gonna hard shut down the entire economy for an undisclosed period of time.
No, they went off how much time that Trump originally said. He gave a 2 months or a month and a half, something like that. Whatever the original time period was, they were basing off of that.
Yeah,
they said between 25 and 35 million job loss. They're actually pretty close, right in the middle so far.
Yes, we'll see if it actually slows down or if it overshoots that.
Yeah, they didn't specify what happens after that period because there's a lot of debate whether it's going to be a U or a V or a flat line. I'm pessimistic, honestly.
Yeah, so I kind of see this as it was just a letter that Schiff sent, but him in his capacity as
his letter means something.
Yeah, him being chair of the Judiciary Committee, or no, it was the Intelligence Committee, which is very powerful committee. That letter has a lot of force behind it, and I think personally this was Schiff testing the waters, as a lot of Democrats are all over the country right now, seeing what they can get away with. Maybe Schiff thinks if he can convince platforms that they need to get rid of information that he deems to be misinformation as it relates to the coronavirus, maybe after the coronavirus is over, he can get them to do that on a political context too. And then, we got Slowpoke has given us $2. For some reason, the volume on that is very, very quiet.
It's very quiet. I was about to ask you, am I hearing things? Am I just hearing her voice in my head now? That's a problem.
You are.
All you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth.
How dare you? All right, Slowpoke says, the issue is that new information comes and goes insanely fast, and things we believe about the virus we thought was true then is false now. The WHO's person-to-person tweet is still up. Last I saw, it did not age well. Yes.
Yep. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm critical about Trump. I do give him a little bit of a leniency here in that I don't blame him as much for downplaying it as he did. He definitely downplay it. He was definitely wrong. There's no sugarcoating that. He said it's going to be like the flu argument, right? But even then, even though he had the opinion it was going to be like the flu, because he believed what the WHO said. That's why he gets a little bit of leniency for me. It's because he had advisors and people that were, who experts believed were telling the truth. For whether it's stupid or not that they believe the WHO, they did. And he was being told with all the information he had that this was going to be like. And he's not a doctor, and he probably didn't have time to spend as much time personally looking up what was going on in China like we did, because he has a whole country to run.
Yeah, but that's why he set up his task force back in January.
Right. To explore what was going on, because he doesn't know. So you're right. That's a good thing he did.
Yep.
He's the only one who acted. So
and Trump gave them an out a few weeks ago. Trump was asked during an interview, does he think that impeachment did that slow down his response at all? And he said, I was thinking about it. Honestly, I don't think that there's anything I would have done different. I think that we acted with the information we had at the time, and I don't think that we would have done anything different. He gave the Democrats such a handout right there. It was very generous of him to give them such a big handout. He could have very easily said, "Oh yeah, it was the impeachment that really slowed down the response time on everything. I think that really got us off on the wrong foot, and I think that slowed down everything. I think that was part of the reason why the economy is hurting so bad." He could have really played it up that was what the cause was. And he gave the Democrats an out and said, no, it wasn't the impeachment. And then Schiff here turns that around and goes, well, had we done the impeachment all the way, we could have saved everybody. Kind of going the opposite way with that, because that's what we needed right at the cusp of a massive pandemic, was to have a government in continuous flux of having a president be in the process of removed, trying to figure out how to transition the vice president, probably looking at doing more hearings for Pence, having all kinds of just craziness while Trump gets removed from office, and they're trying to figure out how to do that. And doing that would have happened right at that critical time period when the pandemic was getting kicked off. And Schiff seems to think that having the American government as completely unstable as possible would have sped up the response time. I mean, maybe having the government be non-existent might have sped up the response time, but I don't think having it unstable would have done anything more than what it already did.
It would have made it way, way worse. There'd be no
leadership.
Yeah, there'd be no leadership. Did I just hear it again? No, I didn't. Okay.
I mean, you did, but it wasn't in your ears. It was just in your head.
Oh, God. Well, I was going to go crazy one day.
And that day was a few years ago.
Right. Definitely missed that day. Again, these people are doing nothing for our country, and we need to get them out of office. I mean, again, Trump has, despite having roadblocks every step of the way, he has visibly been trying to do everything he can to actually help improve the lives of Americans. Whereas the sole focus of the Democrats has not been to have a policy to help people. They don't even have a platform other than Orange Man Bad. Their sole focus has been to destroy their political adversary, no matter what the cost to the American people.
You can't eat Orange Man Bad.
Right.
Alrighty. Next story. Biggest blow to feminism since Facts and Logic.
I love your rewrite of that title.
So, feminists everywhere and their legion of soy boy cucks on Twitter were much dismayed this week to learn that the occupation of dictator will not be making a much anticipated step towards achieving gender parity. The shocking revelation came when Kim Jong-un was reportedly found to be dead, meaning his sister will not be becoming the world's newest female dictator. For now, at least.
She's still the dictator in my heart.
That is disgusting. I quit. You should be. That was over the line, Dyer. Read your lines, you dork.
Okay, so Kim Jong-un's undead appearance was reportedly at an opening ceremony at a new North Korean factory for fertilizer, by the way. Fertilizer factory. Why would our dear leader need to be at a fertilizer factory opening? That's crazy. Can you imagine the president going to a fertilizer factory opening? We've produced really good shit here.
I hate you. Reread that line though, because you broke the flow. There's a flow for the joke there.
So Kim Jong-un's undead appearance was reportedly at an opening ceremony at a new North Korean factory, which is really hard to believe that North Korea has a factory. I'm sure they have lots of fertilizer. It's made of people. Reports of the appearance there are facing skepticism too, as the source of this new is North Korean's state media. And Western media has been unable to identify, independently confirm if he was really there. There was no pictures, or if the pictures, what?
Yeah, there were pictures, but they weren't sure if they were recycled from previous events or not.
Oh, okay. A Fox News report that I watched on that earlier said there was no new pictures, but regardless,
the Fox News report I watched said that there was pictures, but they were unconfirmed.
Okay, fair enough. So, could not be independently confirmed pictures that may or may not exist that could have been recycled from previous events. But if true, this would have been his first public appearance in 3 weeks, during which time rumors of grave health and even his death were widely circulated. And we joked about it last show.
Yes, we did, because that would have made him a good communist. It is still believed that he did suffer at least some sort of illness, possibly relating to complications with a reported heart surgery that he recently underwent. Either way, the gender balance of world dictators will remain decidedly male, just like STEM fields.
But not but not in a gender studies, though. They still have overwhelming. They're winning there. As for us, we would only shed tears over his death if it wasn't long and painful. I would. I totally agree with that. But the last thing that region needs is instability right now. That if he does die, there's gonna be a lot of killing off of those who are loyal to him and not perceived as loyal to the replacement. And there's a lot of people vying for that throne once he's dead.
Well, it would be very similar to when the Soviet Union collapsed. When the Soviet Union collapsed, all of the generals that were stationed all across the giant country that it is, it just became a grab of whatever resources and people that were around you, and you had for a little while there, you had generals kind of inhabiting bases with nukes on them, and they kind of had their people stationed there were loyal to them, and they kind of devolved into little fiefdoms of whoever could just kind of grab what they could and hang on to it as tightly as they could. That exact same thing would be happening in North Korea if there was some kind of big toppling at the top. You would see a lot of the generals trying to vie for power because they know if they don't get that power, they're going to be up against the wall as soon as next week.
Exactly. So what a lot of people don't realize about North Korea is even though the leader is has power, a lot of power, they are very much controlled by the military leaders around them. It's a very militaristic government. And so there is a lot of them who would want power, who already have a lot of power, who already have a lot of loyalty of their troops. If there was a gap where a power gap where the natural successor in lineage wasn't, respected well enough, it's possible that one of the military leaders could take over. And there'd probably be, even if that's not the likelihood that they'd win, there's still a likelihood of conflict between the likely successor and the military leaders who love to have the throne.
And we'd really like them to not be like, if they didn't have nukes, I could care less. But they've got nukes, and you never know which general is going to get a hold of that base and get a strong hold, and what they may or may not want to do with that. That's never good. I know that was a big concern when the Soviet Union collapsed. Obviously, we wanted it to collapse, but it was also very risky when it did, because again, you just don't know who is going to end up guarding those launch keys. And that's going to be the same thing in North Korea, is we just won't have any idea what the state of things is going to be over there. And I bet you, I bet you there'll be very, very, very high alert from the U.S. military at large if it really was possible that he had died and that they were trying to look to transition power to somebody, or there was any idea that there'd be instability there. I bet you guys will go on pretty high alert, just wanting to make sure that anything that happened in country stayed in country during that transitional period.
Absolutely. And then also with instability, you have a lot of people trying to get out. There'd probably be a very huge a refugee problem. And
which way would they go? That'd be the question.
There's not any good answer to that question.
Well, I mean, they could go, south would probably gladly take them, and they always have for like the very small number of people that have escaped to the South. The South always is very, very friendly to them, but I just don't know how much the South could actually take from that. Like I don't like I mean 1 or 2 here every few months is no big deal, but I don't think they could actually take like en masse
all of
the
them
country. And then what China is just going to be sniping them across the board. China. Yeah. As soon as you think our border controls are crazy, the left does. I wonder what happens to you if you sneak over the border to China. You probably become you probably end up at that fertilizer factory. not on the assembly line. Well, no, actually,
you might be on the assembly
literally
line.
on it, not working
Part
on it.
Of it.
Yes.
Yeah, and China also, as they have expansionary aspirations as well. There's just as much of a chance that they would look for an opportunity to put in a leader that is puppet of theirs.
Yeah,
right?
if I was China, like I don't see why I wouldn't. If there was instability there, I don't see why I wouldn't go in with the military, pick out my favorite North Korean general, and say, "You are my puppet now." And you will have great things if you agree to that. And if they say no, they shoot him in the head, get the next guy. He says yes. They install him. They use the Chinese military to calm the nation. And then it's...
what do you mean coal?
Isn't that what I said? And then it's back to business as usual, except for it's basically strictly China. It's China's... they stuck their hand in the sock puppet instead of just using the little strings to make them dance. They're actually in there doing all the stuff, and it really just becomes another Chinese territory,
basically.
Which
it's
would
almost
not be
that right
great.
now.
Not be great for us. I think that would be. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it like massively would increase the danger, but it doesn't decrease the danger. So I think that we shouldn't any move that China makes that doesn't decrease their danger to us, that not a good move. Neutral is not. It might as well be bad.
Yes. So, I mean, do you think he's dead?
No, I think if he really was dead, there would be. I think there would be movement
shooting
elsewhere. What's that?
I think you'd see more shooting.
Yeah, I think that there would be clear spillover. I think that there would be. I think it would be visible to everybody. Now maybe there's stuff that's happening that's maybe only visible to intelligence agencies, but I think that by now we would have known something by now, because during that period would be when information flow in and out of the country would be at its weakest. Like the restrictions on it would be at their weakest when everybody's in disarray, trying to get that power or trying to escape before whoever gets the power comes and kills them. That nobody's going to be focusing on your average North Korean citizen for those few weeks, and we would be getting massive information dumps out of them if that was the case. And we're not seeing that. We're not seeing China doing anything crazy other than just a small medical team that they sent there. I don't know. I think that there would be more clear evidence if he really was dead. I don't know. I don't think he is.
I don't think so either. But and for the same reasons, actually.
Yeah. So again, not good that he's still alive. He deserves the he deserves the helicopter like the rest of them. But the alternative, him being alive, that's not good. But the alternative of him being dead is complete unpredictability of a nuclear power in a strategic region, which is even worse than not good.
On the bright side, eventually every dictator becomes a good dictator because they all die eventually.
Yes. Alrighty. Well, sorry to all the feminists out there. You will not get your chance. What would she dictate? Like sandwich making policy? I don't know. No, they don't. I don't know. That'd be hard because they don't have sandwiches there.
I'm sure she just horribly murder and oppress people just in a more feminist way.
A murder sandwich.
Murder witch. Mm.
All right, do we reach our quota of offensive SJW senselessness?
I don't know. I think I have the bad joke of the day so far. Unforgivable.
I don't know if that was a joke, because just I don't know. Let's move on. It makes me uncomfortable to think about it. Alrighty, our next story is The Atlantic says that China was right when it comes to internet censorship. Fuck that. Go fuck yourself, Atlantic. Jesus Christ. On April 27th, The Atlantic magazine published an article that attempted is in all caps. I'm assuming that their attempt was a failure, but there was an attempt to praise and defend the iron grip of censorship the Chinese government has had over their version of the internet, which is not the internet, but the Chinese version of the internet.
It's really important to specify that.
Yes. The article was titled, quote, "Internet speech will never go back to normal." What do they mean? It's just these people. And though that title may be a true statement, with the freedom of speech being curtailed more and more every day, The Atlantic is likely in the minority in thinking that that is a good thing.
I would hope so.
You know, they're the same amendment that protects their ability to write that article is what they're arguing against. It's so dumb. So dumb. So dumb.
Yes. Authoritarians love authoritarianism when it benefits them, when they are in power, but not so much when they no longer are in power. Then they call for revolution. It's a cycle that happens over and over again, just like in France. Right now, SWs call for internet censorship, and they have been doing for a long time. And they want to censor unpopular and conservative opinions. It's unpopular with them, and they've been doing this for a long time. And they've been doing it on YouTube and Twitter and basically every large platform. They want these platforms to ban speech they disagree with. But what they're calling for, the kind of censorship from China, well, in China, SJWs and Antifa wouldn't be allowed to have their opinions. What they're calling for would actually be oppression for them. They just don't realize it because they think it's going to only be applied to their opponents, not themselves. The Atlantic only likes the idea of Chinese-style tech censorship because they imagine it will only be used to silence their opponents. They are fools for believing this.
Yes, they are. In their article, The Atlantic also defended the U.S.-based technology companies who have employed surveillance and speech controls in response to the coronavirus, claiming it showed the virtue of this kind of censorship. Wow, that's very... Man, these people, they just really love 1984. They're just, wow, this is a playbook. Like, words have meaning. You can't just start throwing them around like that. Virtue of censorship. Wow. That is very Orwellian. They wrote significant monitoring of speech control are inevitable components of a mature and flourishing internet, and governments must play a large role in these practices to ensure that the internet is compatible with society's norms. Jesus! All right, let's rewrite that because again, they are using the First Amendment to attack the First Amendment. They're like, well, our part of the First Amendment is like, 2 clauses away from this one, so that's probably enough distance to start attacking it. So let's just change it up a little bit though. Significant monitoring and speech control are an inevitable components of a mature and flourishing media apparatus, and governments must play a large role in ensuring that these media practices are compatible with society's norms and values. maybe art, significant monitoring and art control are inevitable components of a mature and flourishing art community, and governments must play a large role in these practices to ensure that the art is compatible with society's norms and values. I mean, good God, Well, I mean, it sounds just as ridiculous to say it was speech, but I mean, you had those other ones in there. It sounds even more ridiculous. I think, I think even we are deadened to hearing how often freedom of speech is under attack, because saying it like that, saying the art or saying the press and reading that sentence like that sounds more ridiculous than saying freedom of speech. And I think it's just even our own personal bias. Is just we've been whittled down by all these attacks on freedom of speech for so long. It's like, that just sounds like a normal thing that people say, even though it is just as ridiculous.
Absolutely.
But how about this one? Significant monitoring of religion control are inevitable components of a mature, flourishing society or religion. The governments must play a large role in these practices to ensure that religion is compatible with society's norms and values.
No matter how many examples you give, it's not going to get any smarter. Okay, it's still crazy, is what I'm saying.
I need to go work for them. Jeez, I get paid to spout out bullshit.
Yeah, someone got paid money to publish this.
A lot of money. An essential job, a lot of money.
Yeah, that's insane. In any case, what happens when the ruling parties or whatever government or tech industry monopoly it is? Because it could be the government being the censor, or it could be, in this case, just being a bunch of tech companies working together to silence you, right? But what if they don't agree with you? And I don't mean you, the audience, but I mean anyone having this argument, the Atlantic, Antifa. What if they don't agree with you and your opinions? What happens when your opinions are not popular anymore? Are people in China that would like there are people in China that would like their government to be held accountable. There are people in China where their political and religious beliefs or opinions would get them put in jail, would get them killed, would get them so Antifa wants Chinese-style censorship, but they would be violently suppressed by the same government for which they want to emulate. The Atlantic wants Chinese-style censorship, but the Chinese wouldn't allow them to be free to criticize the government. They wouldn't be free to produce the news. So in the end, even the Atlantic doesn't want what they're asking for. They're just too stupid to realize it. Because they wouldn't want to be on the other side of the sword.
Yeah, that's the whole point. There's no we've talked about this before. The right side of the spectrum, the libertarian side of the spectrum, we would prefer to craft society in a way where we are still safe even if our political rivals gain power. The left would like to organize society in such a way that it is only them that would ever get power, and it would be impossible for their political adversaries to get power. So they design things that wouldn't be good for them if they flipped the script as to who was in power, whereas we would prefer things to be designed in a way that if we did lose power, then we're all still safe.
Basically, because we know that if we're going to advocate for a rule, it has to be a rule that applies to us as well. They're so short-sighted, they don't think that way. Because I promise you, the only thing that is, a guarantee in life other than death and taxes is that change. There will always be change, and who's in charge now will not be in charge later on.
Well, and what kind of, you think back even through recent history, but, you think back through, the last 1,000 years. Slavery, that was with society's norms and values. Would 1800s Twitter, should they have, been censoring out the abolitionist movement as being outside of society's norms and values? Should they have been removing that content before anybody was able to engage with it? It makes you wonder. there wasn't Twitter in the 1800s, but there's Twitter now, and there's similar things going on in the Middle East and in China that are being censored. There's the Uyghurs right now. That's going on in China, and that's going in internment camps, and apparently being used as slave labor in factories every now and then,
and for also organs.
Yes, they must be very good organists. A lot of church music, right?
Right.
Right. So that's kind of it's crazy because that's what's going on right now. And the Atlantic is saying that right now China's censorship is virtue. Is it virtuous that they are stopping their citizenry from telling the world the truth about the atrocities that China's committing? Is it virtuous to be censoring? That they are committing massive human rights violations, that they're having slave labor, that they're having massive religious prosecution. Apparently, that's what the Atlantic.
That sounds what they're saying. So, I mean, you're saying it sarcastically, but I mean, if I believe the Atlantic, they are a well-respected news agency.
I think well-respected was where you should cough.
I don't know what I started. I had trouble saying that with a straight face.
You're allergic to manure. I bet you that's what that factory in North Korea is running off of. It's just the print edition of the Atlantic. Let's see here. So the Atlantic didn't just praise Chinese censorship; they also justified China's massive surveillance state by sharing the personal data. And the sharing of personal data without permission. They mentioned how Facebook offered to share users' data. Oh, triumvirate.
People want Chinese-style censorship? Sure thing. But all the censorship is done by Trump. And Pence and nobody else gets a say in what is censored. Not society, not the journalists. Just Orange Man and Zappy Boy like how the Chinese communists do it.
Zappy Boy. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, Pence, come electrocute me, Daddy Pence. I mean that's exactly right. Triumvirate is they're advocating for government to have this massive control over the daily lives and what you're even allowed to say. Well, who's in charge of the government right now? It's Trump. Are they that stupid? Who do they think? Okay, yes, they are. Who do they think is going to be making those decisions? It'd be the executive branch who gets to decide those things, how those laws should be implemented. Well, right now, it's Trump is in charge of all that. They really want Trump to have those reins of power. And that goes to, again, where we would like to design a government structure, a societal structure, that if someone like a Hillary Clinton gets into power, if someone like an Adam Schiff gets into power, if someone like Ocasio-Cortez were to get, president or something like that, that the system would be designed in such a way that it doesn't matter because they don't have these giant levers of power to beat us over the head with, that it would still be safe even if someone like that were to get elected. Whereas they would like to design it that it is so strong that their levers of power are so strong that once they get elected, the opposing party could never get elected again. And we saw a little attempt at that. It was a pretty big attempt. It just failed during the Russiagate scandal with the FBI and all the stuff that they were doing. That was an attempt the Democrats, the left, the progressives, whatever you want to call them, the establishment, whoever it is, they had gotten power and they were trying to use these ridiculously powerful levers of power to make sure that no one outside of their political ideology ever got elected again. They failed, but they came very, very close. And that's the kind of society that the left would love to create, is something that's got just that much power. You're not allowed to say certain words, that you're not allowed to run for office if you're, of the opposing party, that you're not allowed to do all of these things, that if it was flipped, they would not want to be living under.
They call it oppression.
Yes, exactly. So, but yeah, right, yeah, exactly. It's just Triumvirate is spot on though. It's they are basically advocating that Trump has the power to tell them what they can and can't say. That's great.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. So the Atlantic also said that they were happy about China just sharing out Chinese citizen data with other Chinese citizens so that they could know who was coming across contact with each other, which is a very high-tech sci-fi way of contact tracing. But, you know, maybe it's there's a thing that's called civil liberties and privacy and all that sort of stuff. The Atlantic mentioned how Facebook offered to share their users' data to help fight the coronavirus pandemic in a similar way, but it would have been an opt-in system. How it would have helped or why it would be necessary is dubious at best. Many civil rights organizations and activists have been okay with the temporary violation of people's civil liberties and privacy, but only as long as they are used as a temporary measure for dealing with the coronavirus. And again, it's not so much as in the short term, and we're starting to get into the not short term. Well, we are no longer in the short term. We're probably going to start talking about that more over the coming weeks, about, you know, where the lockdown's at, you know, what it needs to be, you know, getting over and stuff like that. We had a different tune, you know, 6-8 weeks ago. And I didn't really see it back then and I still don't. I think it was pretty obvious that the lockdowns were going to continue to escalate, but that doesn't mean that they weren't necessary. Just because a policy has the potential to be abused doesn't make it the wrong policy. It makes it that the abuse was still wrong. So I still think that the lockdowns back then were still absolutely necessary, and I didn't really see it as a temporary violation of my civil liberties. I saw it as everybody coming together to make a temporary sacrifice to protect everyone. Now, it is morphing from that kind of rosy picture of everybody coming together into actual violations of civil liberties. But we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, so a lot of people were saying, you know, these temporary measures are, you know, there's an acceptable, there's a level of acceptability for that on the short term while we get all this stuff figured out. Jay Stanley from the American Civil Liberties Union said, we need to make sure that we've made it past the crisis. When we've made it past the crisis, our country isn't transformed into a place that we don't want to live. Again, that's what libertarians are trying to make, is that, you know, regardless of who's in power, it doesn't make the country unlivable for whatever you believe. The Electronic Frontier Foundation said any extraordinary measure used to manage a specific crisis must not become a permanent fixture in the landscape of government's intrusions into daily life. Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it, that a temporary measure doesn't become a permanent measure, as they so often do.
Yes, but I think he's right that if we had something that was the reason why we're doing it is simply because there's an emergency that makes under that context it makes sense, right? But then that emergency goes away, and now you no longer have the context that made that action reasonable. Well, you should no longer be doing that action, right?
Exactly.
Right. And
we talk about this all the time too. Is, you know, the bureaucracy, it's usually created with a purpose, but over time, usually a short period of time, the purpose of that bureaucracy transforms into just perpetuating its own existence. It starts out with a mission, and over time, that mission becomes perpetuate the mission,
which is unfortunate.
Yes.
But the lockdowns really, in their initial form, was advised by the president, was it really a violation of people's liberties, that they're saying that those things were. I don't think that, say, telling people to not form groups because there's a virus that's literally killing people or has the potential to kill many more, and only on a temporary basis. There was even a timeline put out saying, hey, we're doing these measures for this time period because of this reason, and it's for the public safety. As far as, you know, your right to do something does not trump someone's right to life, right? It was not that you didn't have freedoms, is that you could not express your freedom in a way that would take away someone else's freedom. But that's very different to me than, you know, violating someone's right to privacy of their personal information, right? Because I don't think that you can make an argument that the Facebook data that's being given to you is going to really save lives. And that's necessary. And it's going to have a huge effect. I think that I know that a lot of the lockdown procedures have been, in some states, have been over the top and unnecessary and damaging for no reason. But in general, the idea of social distancing and reducing. Was there another donation?
No.
What am I hearing?
Do you? I don't know. I think you're going crazy.
I might have a video going on in the background. Whatever it is. So I lost my train of thought. I don't think that the violations.
I think your train derailed.
I think the violations done by taking away your privacy, by doing Chinese style censorship, which is not just censorship. They're also talking about surveillance. The cameras everywhere, tracking your phone's GPS location, everything on social media about you being tracked. That's what they're talking about when they're talking about Chinese style censorship and data gathering. That is, there's no way that that information is going to have enough of a positive effect to save lives, in my opinion, that it would justify taking away everyone's freedoms.
Agreed.
So I'm drawing the line there.
Well, I think that there's there's some basic things like just demographic data that could be anonymized and shared, but we can't.
That's different, though.
Because of HIPAA. No, I'm just talking about, like, in general, like, there's levels of information that we could share. And instead of the media, what the media could be doing, what would be a useful thing for them to do right now is to be advocating that one of the things that we're missing right now is good data on the demographics of who is at risk for the coronavirus. Now, we slowly have begun learning that, it's really heavily towards old people. Yeah, it's stuff that we knew for a long time, but there's data that exists in America now. It's just not being shared. There has not been any U.S. federal government reports talking about demographic data for age groups and lifestyles and comorbidities. There's been none of that data released by the federal government because of HIPAA. These privacy laws that they exist for a reason, but also you can anonymize that data and share out a chart saying, at a high level, all across the nation, 99% of the people are, in this category. That would be some great data to have that would help people start, understanding what is actually a risk, what is it they can do, is every square inch outside your house, is it all a complete danger, or, based off your personal circumstances, is there some things that are probably safer to do or an acceptable level of risk? There's all kinds of good data that is out there that the government is not sharing already. And so for the media to skip from, well, it'd be nice to get some of that demographic data released. Maybe the Trump administration needs to take a look at, do these laws make sense? Do they need to be suspended? Does Congress need to update them? Does there need to be an exception made? Whatever. They could be advocating for that. But instead they're saying, well, we could do that, but why don't we just skip straight to, Big Brother stuff, tapping your phone and tracking your locations and sharing that information with everybody, and the government should be forcibly doing that to everybody. I mean, that's really crazy that we can't get the government to share anonymized HIPAA data, but we think that they will be willing to share your location data out of your phone that they've tapped. That's a pretty wild jump. I mean, there's some gradients there that maybe one baby step at a time, not like, a light speed jump across the galaxy to just that kind of really evasive privacy violation. I mean, the type of privacy violation I'm talking about by posting aggregated, anonymized HIPAA data is very, very, very small privacy violation. Almost not a privacy violation at all.
So when it's anonymized, it's no longer violating your privacy, in my opinion.
But they still can't release it. So my point being, again, is just that there is data the government could be releasing and using to help people that wouldn't be invading their privacy, that they're not doing. Instead of calling for that, the media is calling for evasive privacy violations. It's ridiculous. Right. They are dumb.
And anyone is saying that's what we're arguing for, is the release of anonymous data or anonymized data. That's not what we're talking about. They're clearly advocating for Chinese style, which is I think you guys we've explained well enough what that means. That is a oppressive regime that is going to find you at your home if you search for the wrong thing online. It's not something that we'd want to live through.
Alrighty, we know what kind of searches you guys do. Definitely, they're coming for you. So, our next story is a quick story. Thayer, do you want to read that first part there?
Sure. Do you remember how the left-wing media, including CNN's Don Lemon, worst journalist of the year, Don Lemon, every day for the last month plus have criticized Trump for his press conferences? They said that he was spreading dangerous falsehoods, most of which turned out to not be dangerous or false. Don Lemon led the chorus of media voices saying that the news media shouldn't be covering the press. In fact, his press conferences. They said that they should not show them live because Trump might say something wrong or spread misinformation and it could get people killed. He might suggest a new drug like chloroquine that is just going to kill everybody who takes it, because it's so far one person who drank fishbowl cleaner didn't recommend. So let's try to kill your husband, in which case it's very effective. So they were saying that they shouldn't cover it live, that they should only show segments that they want to criticize basically later on. So they cut out anything that embarrasses them. They criticize him constantly for having these press conferences, and everything about the press conferences they criticize him for. Well, when Trump canceled just one of his briefings, Don Lemon goes on TV that day and says that Trump was trying to make us believe that the coronavirus pandemic was over by not talking about it.
Jesus.
You can't win with these guys.
Yeah. Like, I guess for Don Lemon's, like, to his credit, he knows that no one watches his show, so it's like not a big deal for him to like switch gears like that, because he knows it's not a big deal. Like, no one's gonna call him out on it, or very few people are gonna call him out on it, or if they do, it'll be days later. I still love that one segment that we did a few months ago when Don Lemon had that guy there that was calling everybody called the Republicans credulous boomer rubes for like Trump's demographic, like his key demo. And it took like, the funniest part of that story was that it took 3 days for anyone to realize that had happened, because nobody watches Don Lemon's show.
Yeah.
That's kind of like even more of an overt thing that the media does. You know, the media often does this thing where they'll kind of report on something. So the early reporting on chloroquine was the media, reporting on some anecdotes and early studies. Trump sees those media reports, gets a hold of them, and says, "Oh, this is interesting. I'm going to talk about it." And then the media goes, "Trump is talking about dangerous things." And it's like, he's just repeating what you guys reported 2 weeks ago. And they do that over and over and over and over again. Media is saying, "Oh, it's just the flu." Trump goes, "No, I heard it was just the flu. That's what people are saying. People are saying that. That's what people are saying." And then the media the next day, they're like, "Trump says it's only the flu. It's dangerous. It's dangerous."
Oh my God.
Don Lemon and stupid black hole. Alrighty. Well, moving on. I don't remember how to get to the folding at home thing. Let me see here.
I just always search for it.
Yeah. So our next story is about folding at home, except for probably won't be, because I can't find our team name. Well, I know what our team name is. I just forget how to get to our page.
It's description of our video.
Is it? Oh, yeah. There you go. That's perfect. Yeah, click on that. Dyer actually, he's on the board now. That's pretty wild.
I don't believe it.
I don't either. It's pretty bad.
Fox is lying to you guys. I don't do folding at home.
He doesn't
I'm
even
above
know
that.
Yeah, Dyer's wife does all the folding. Alrighty. So so folding at home off day. So you guys know what folding at home is. We've been talking about it for several weeks now. let's see here. So, folding at home is you can link your computer to a big network of computers all over the country, all over the world. All of those computers together form the biggest supercomputer in the known universe, so far as I know. Nobody's come to tell me that I was wrong on that, so I stand that is the fact.
This is Fox's known universe, not everyone's known universe.
I know a lot of universes. So the that linking your computer to that giant supercomputer network, what they are doing is they are doing simulations of the coronavirus on a molecular level. Your computer will be joined to that network. You'll get a little. You don't have to do any of this, but like this is what your computer is doing when you link it up there. It'll get a little data packet. It'll do some processing on it, and it'll be sent back to a main server. And that main server is going to link all of those little work units together from all over the world, everybody's computer making these little teeny tiny experiments together, and then the main computer is going to link all those little experiments together into a giant experiment. And what they're doing is they are trying to find weaknesses in the molecular structure of the coronavirus, looking to see the way the coronavirus works is it makes little proteins that do stuff. They're little tiny machines made out of proteins, and what the simulation does is it looks at each one of those little machines and looks at how they move and tries to figure out if at any point during their movement cycle are they susceptible to an existing drug. And so this is what something, what we were hoping with chloroquine is that, this old existing drug just happened to be really good at killing the coronavirus. What this system is looking for is looking to see, are there any other drugs out there that we already have available that just happen to be good at gumming up the machinery that the coronavirus operates on. So it's a great project. I love it. I think it's really fantastic. I'm happy that we have everybody here working together. We had a lot of people join us, so we are still top 5,000, which is really exciting. So our team, if you want to join the Folding at Home team and join your computer to this network, there's a link down in the description. You can join the Direwolf Media team. We are team 250791. So far, we have top 5,000. We have folded 1,558 work units. That's a lot. Dark Dave, he is got, I think he's third place. He's got 365 work units completed. Good job. Triumvirate is in second place, I believe, with 306. Nice. I've got 480. Catch up, guys. Shadow Wolf's got 60. Thank you. Star Shadow has 215. And he just told me yesterday that he's got some more computers working on it now, so that's good. Wolf Smoke got 104. Direwolf folded 18 units this week. He had 1 for like the last 4 weeks in a row. He's finally on the board there. Dang, that's crazy. I wonder what happened. Yeah, I mean, as his wife went on strike, she wasn't folding no more. He had to learn how to fold himself. Then Thunder Erikin, she has 12. Thank you for that. So that's great. Yeah, you guys should definitely join up. It's a good cause. We're not all scientists. We don't know how to make viruses, or how to make, we also probably don't know how to make viruses. We don't know how to make a vaccine, don't know how drugs work, don't know how to intubate somebody with a ventilator. But you can do your part and contribute still with the resources that you have by contributing your computer power to Folding at Home. Good cause, good way to help fight the virus, in addition to not putting yourself in dangerous situations. But yeah, I love it. It's great. Links in the description. Join it. Please do it. Do it now, or Dyer will say that joke again. That was awful, and you'll have to listen to it again.
I will do it.
Don't
make me do it.
Every time you don't sign up for Folding at Home, Dyer thinks that joke that he said earlier that was unrepeatable.
Well, I can repeat it. You just don't want it.
I don't. Alrighty. Ready for our next story?
Certainly.
Alrighty. We say goodbye to YouTube. We just stay on YouTube.
Oh yeah, don't forget about CNN's contributor Richard Spencer.
Oh yeah. CNN contributor Richard Spencer. I forgot about that. That was my favorite. Okay. California, they are paying $1 billion with a B $1 billion to China for face masks. My goodness, that's a lot of dough. Probably even more. Was it yuan? I think they got yuan over there. Late last month, California Governor Newsom announced that he had secured a really great deal to get his state 400 million masks for the low price of $990 million. He was going to get these masks from a Chinese electric car manufacturer, BYD, which has a different name in Chinese, but is BYD in English. That's what they named it in English. I don't know. Just go with it. That price and amount of masks works out to about $2.50 per mask, $2.50. For context, Honeywell, a U.S.-based manufacturer, is selling the same, probably better, masks for 79 cents. Unlike BYD, however, Honeywell actually has experience in making masks because, again, BYD is an electric car manufacturer in China. And Honeywell already has their masks approved by all the U.S. regulatory agencies, whereas BYD, a electric car manufacturer in China, is not approved to make masks by U.S. regulatory agencies. Go figure.
Can imagine why.
Yeah.
So while the first shipment of masks did not arrive this week, the specifics of the deal have been...
Did arrive.
Sorry.
Where do you get these extra words from?
Okay, while the first shipment of masks did arrive this week, the specifics of the deal have been a closely guarded secret. One California State House representative said, "We don't have any information as to how many masks we're buying." I think they would know that. Who we're buying them from, or at what price. What are we obligated? For how long are we obligated? The basic answers to these questions can be answered from the information that is publicly available, and doing some simple math, which I know is hard.
Basically that quote is just California's representatives are ill-informed and can't do math or read the news. But the larger part of that article was the state house representatives that were in charge of the budget. They have oversight over the money that Newsom is spending. And when they asked Newsom's office, they weren't saying. While a lot of this information was publicly available, Newsom's office, for some reason, wasn't sending it to their state house representatives. Is very, very weird situation.
Very. So for how long are we obligated? So basically, gosh, I said that. So basic answers to these questions can be answered in information from the information that's publicly available. Doing some simple math, not meth, but deeper details like what was this particular Chinese company selected, and what was the decision process that led to buying these more expensive foreign-made masks when cheaper options were available here at home. Also, we shouldn't be trusting their manufacturing in the first place. And they have been sending out bad products, bad masks to other places. So why are we buying from them at all?
Yeah. So it's unclear if domestic suppliers could have actually met California's demand. Again, California is getting 400. They ordered. We'll see. It remains to be seen if they will get, but they ordered 400 million masks. So it's mask supply worldwide is pretty short. So it's unclear if domestic suppliers could have actually met California's demand. And if they had met California's demand, would they have had to make other states short on supplies as a result? So it is possible that going to China was California's only option to buy that many masks. But if that was the case, then why not just explain that was the case? Why don't they explain that they looked and looked, and they couldn't find anybody else other than this Chinese car company, and that was the only place and the only price that they could secure the equipment that they needed? As if they just came out and explained that, that would be great. Everybody would be happy about it. But Newsom being cagey about it and trying to hide and not explaining what the thought process for going to this particular company was, for what the thought process was for accepting such a high price for it. And again, from a company that has no experience making masks and no equipment to make masks either. Which is fine. There's a lot of companies in America that have, and all over the world too, that have switched over to starting to make things that they didn't traditionally make, ventilators being one of the primary things, which is perfectly fine. But, there needs to be understanding, and I think that the Californian people, if they're going to be paying $1 billion for it, I think it's a rather simple question to say, hey, well, how did you come to that decision to spend $1 billion? I think it's pretty reasonable. And if you don't have an answer for that, maybe you shouldn't be spending $1 billion.
That seems pretty reasonable. So during the pandemic, many state budgets have been stretched thin, and there is talk of doing state bailouts. Hopefully not California, because they had large deficits.
Keep reading.
Okay. Bailouts at the federal level. It has been theorized that states that had deficits and debts that pre-existed the pandemic, mostly blue states like California, may be looking at this as an opportunity to balance the books. It's not balancing the books. It's just printing money and not being true to your debts. Blow out spending at on healthcare for the virus, then get the federal government to use tax dollars from the other 49 states to bail them out of their debt, not just debt brought by the pandemic, but debt they had previously. While this may seem a little conspiratorial, it was the Democrats that popularized the "never let a crisis go to waste," not us. There's also Hillary who recently said that exact phrase. She couldn't help but be in the news again because she's feeling lonely, I guess. She also is like what's his face?
Schiff.
Adam Schiff, and she's not getting in the media every once in a while. She'll literally die from lack of attention.
Yeah. It was funny. I know what you're talking about. The Hillary unironically said that what would she call it, an adage?
Yeah, she said the old adage.
Yeah, the old adage that never let a crisis go to waste. She unironically said, "Never let a crisis go to waste." It was like, yeah, it's like a virtuous thing to do, is to never let crises go to waste. You should always be using them to try to lever to your advantage and try to take advantage of anyone that's in a weakened position because of the crisis. Like,
that's so disgusting.
Like, she unironically said that this week, and we've been making fun of that for, the whole time that we've been in politics, for sure, but certainly in the last few weeks during this particular crisis, there's been a lot of Democrats that have said that, and I just can't believe that they're still saying it unironically. I just can't imagine what level of disconnectedness, lack of self-awareness, just not knowing that the people are making fun of that broadly, or even thinking that it was a good thing. What is the thought process? What kind of personality do you have to again even say that? That's why it's such a thing that we always kind of harp on from a libertarian perspective. It's that's an awful thing to say. Is I'm gonna try and take advantage of this person to make sure that we extract as much whatever we want from them while they're in a crisis, while they have no choice. They're dying in droves, and we're going to take this opportunity to not help them, but to lord over them. That if they don't give us more of what we want, then we're just going to let them die.
It's like a hospital raising their prices when you're on your deathbed.
Yeah, exactly.
So the price for this surgery was $1,000, but because you're bleeding out, the price is $2,000.
Yeah. Why would you let that crisis go to waste?
Exactly.
Yes.
That is
So California is probably looking to do this. That's been theorized. One of the reasons why they spent so much money on it. Michigan right now, they are spending a ridiculous amount of money, and no one's really sure where it's going. I know that there's some other states doing that, and again, it's been theorized that there's talk that already the federal government has been pumping money into state Medicare, Medicaid, and also state unemployment. Obviously, that was part of the stimulus bill. They're pumping money directly into states already, but there's kind of this talk that maybe a next round of stimulus bills will include direct cash injections into states' budgets to make sure that they stay stable. And again, there's a lot of fear that it's all fine and good that if we want to. I'm still a budget hawk, so I don't know if I like it or not, but it is within the realm of discussion. We can have a discussion about compensating states for money spent during the pandemic, but we know that the Democrats are going to try to use this as an opportunity to try to have all the debts cleared, especially Nancy. She's going to definitely want, Nancy and Schiff are going to be at the forefront of trying to make sure that California gets special treatment, that they get their entire budget bailed out and fixed, that all the Democrat-controlled states, again, the ones that are doing the worst off, all their representatives are going to be trying to stuff into a bill, making sure that it's not just a bailout for the current budget, but it's a total bailout or a much larger bailout to the states. We know that they're going to do that. And again, not because it's a conspiracy, but because it's part of the Democrats' playbook. All of them say, never let a crisis go to waste. Based off of what we know what their playbook is, based off what their mantra is, it wouldn't make sense for them to not try to do that. If they didn't try to do that, that would be letting a crisis go to waste. So why wouldn't they do it?
Exactly.
They wouldn't be staying true to their values.
It seems, I've said it a million times. It seems that we have people in there are leaders that their main focus is themselves, their own power, and using a crisis, using the suffering of American people to their advantage. They see this as a opportunity rather than a crisis.
Yeah.
It's sad.
All right. Next story.
Yes, next story.
Alrighty. Operation Warp Speed. Engage. All right. Sadly, Operation Warp Speed is not, I repeat, not the first interplanetary invasion mission being led by the newly minted Space Force. It is, however, being described as the Manhattan Project for the coronavirus and has the goal of making 300 million vaccine doses by January. The only problem? There is no vaccine for the China virus as of yet. I really wish that had been an announcement that Space Force was going to invade Mars or something.
If Trump said that was what they were planning, I'd be totally for it. Because invading Mars.
I heard that there's some WMDs on Mars, and maybe they have oil. So
I heard the same thing. So
we should get over it right now.
Agreed. So normally taking 12 to 18 months worth of trial and error, sometimes even longer than that, vaccine development is a very slow and expensive process. We're talking many millions of dollars just to find one eventual vaccine 12 to 18 months later. To speed that up, Operation Warp Speed will coordinate the various U.S. regulatory agencies with vaccine developers to speed up paperwork and approval processes. The Department of Defense will be using the military to coordinate and manage animal trials, which are normally very expensive and difficult to manage. After the animal testing, viable candidate vaccines go into human trials at the same time will also go into mass production, which is they're not normally done simultaneously.
Yeah, and that last part is key, that at the same time candidate vaccines are going into human trials, they will immediately start mass producing them while they're at the trial phase. That part's key because many, if not most or possibly even all of those candidate vaccines will end up failing their human trials. And by mass producing them at the same time, if one of them does work, then as soon as that trial concludes and says that it works, then all of a sudden it's ready to go. It's already been mass produced. Day one, after that trial is conducted, you can immediately start using that mass produced vaccine. But that means all the other candidates that didn't work, you're going to have a lot of vaccine that you have mass produced for nothing, to no avail, that'll have just gone to waste. Let's see here. So, but that's a great idea, though. That's a great idea to speed it up, though, so that when you do find one that does work, when it's done with the trial and you find out that it works, and you've already got millions of doses ready to go out the door. Again, but you still have a lot of that manufacturing effort will go into vaccines that won't work, and there's gonna be just probably hundreds of thousands of gallons of vaccine that are just completely useless, and that's expected to cost billions of dollars, as is probably expected. But the federal government will be picking up on the tab for that, because the trade-off of having one of those end up working and having millions of doses ready to go the day after the trial ends, that is worth the downside of having to dispose of, and have wasted the manufacturing effort on, hundreds of thousands of gallons of vaccine that's not going to work. That's a really, it's a very good idea. I think it's going to be an effective idea. And it's normally something that you would never be able to do just because of how ridiculously expensive it is. And to the extent that the government should be throwing its weight around, that should be throwing our money around, I think this is actually a pretty good plan. I think this is a good use of our money, as compared to even just within the stimulus bill, some of the billions of dollars that went to different places. This is actually a good use of $1 billion.
Fair enough. So part of this operation will include deciding which groups of Americans need to be first in line to get the vaccine. Oh gosh, I hope that they don't have social justice warrior types or Ocasio-Cortez types determining who should get treated based on historical injustices, because I could see that happening. That's going to be an argument. Just wait for it. The people who get treated first should be those who were more suppressed, 200 years ago. That argument's going to happen. Just hear me out. This plan has been criticized for various reasons, many of which involve Orange Man bad, but some of them are valid. For one, as we reported on a few months ago, previous attempts to vaccinate against other kinds of coronavirus, mainly SARS, were failures. The attempt at SARS vaccine not only did not prevent the infection, it made infections more dangerous. There is some evidence already that shows that COVID-19 vaccines may suffer the same problem, as there have been multiple reports of people who recovered becoming infected again.
And basically, the idea behind a vaccine is it should theoretically be impossible to tell after you've been vaccinated or if you just recovered from whatever you're getting vaccinated against. So the flu, your body should, whether you were vaccinated or you actually got the flu and you got better, it's really indistinguishable. It's triggering an immune reaction, and your body is learning how to fight it. So whether it's learning from the real virus or it's learning from the vaccine, it doesn't really matter. Your immune system is going to learn the same thing, and it's going to respond and defend the same way. So if getting the actual coronavirus and recovering from it, if your immune system can't remember how to fight it the next time and you get reinfected, then a vaccine is not going to be able to teach it anything that it doesn't already know from the coronavirus, which makes it much more of it's a much more difficult task. Now, there is ways around that, but it's a much, much more difficult task. If your body can't learn from the actual virus, it's going to have a real hell of a time trying to learn from a vaccine.
Right. And that's, again, why this might just become an endemic disease as well. We probably haven't seen the end of it. We still haven't got it verified that definitely it is something that the general populace is not getting an immunity to by getting the disease. it could be possible that some people, because we're getting a percentage, right? It could be just like 14% of people can catch it again, but the rest of the people, the 86%, they do develop the ability to defend against it. And there may be a reason behind that. We don't have enough data yet to really be sure, but I'm sure we will be getting that data eventually.
Yeah. Well, maybe if you can get out of the HIPAA laws.
I stand corrected. You're right.
Yeah. So I always think it's funny. I was talking about this a few days ago. Part of this operation is they're going to have a lot of military involvement, and so what the military is going to be doing is they're going to be running logistics of maintaining the animal studies. Animal studies are normally extremely expensive. They're also very difficult to coordinate and maintain. You're trying to. There's just a lot of variables that go into animal studies, and they're typically the most expensive part of getting anything tested. And so the military working to coordinate all that and manage that. That'll take a lot of effort off of the researchers. I also probably kind of comedic too that I don't know if it's gonna be the military will actually be qualified enough to handle that. I imagine someone like Dyer just like chasing after a pig to try and stick it with a needle, but hopefully it's a little better than that. And then the military is also going to be coordinating the human trials, which are also normally pretty difficult to get together. I don't think that they're managing them by having the experiments be on the military personnel, though probably. But they'll be coordinating the logistics of where the lab's at, where the clinic's going to be at. How do you select people? How do you contact them? How do you get them from A to B? All the safety stuff that again is very, very expensive for private companies to do. But military is already there, already being paid for, so might as well use them. But I do think it's funny that they're trying to really push the idea that the military is helping out on this, because they'll always try and toss the military in on, like when they were trying to build the hospitals in New York, like, oh, the military is working on it, which is supposed to engender this idea that's going to be like, oh man, like really quick and efficient. The military is going to do it, which I don't disagree with, but it's just funny the idea that saying that the military is involved. It tries to stir up this idea that's going to be quick and efficient when we know that the military and their typical operations are anything but quick and efficient. See Middle East for the last 19 years.
We were given an impossible mission, all right?
Yeah, so so the coronavirus, so Operation Warp Speed should have us a vaccine sometime in the next 19 years. Just so long as there's not any oil or WMDs in it. But I don't know. This looks like a good project. I think that this is maybe something that could have been scripted out beforehand. I've been saying for a long time that the CDC failed utterly in its mission. I think the entire point of the CDC was to be planning for stuff like this. Now, every virus and disease is different in its specifics, but in general, I think it's predictable that a virus that has a respiratory infection and is resistant to drugs, that is a very predictable set of characteristics that could be planned for. And so things like Operation Warp Speed, instead of having to try to come up with how do you do that after the fact, we're 2 months late on that. Maybe that's something somebody in the CDC could have made up a binder for that, years or decades ago, and it's back in February we could have said, okay, we heard in January that there's this virus in China. It's looking pretty bad. We are going to initiate the binder Operation Overdrive, and we're gonna start getting to work on it. That would have been something that could have been again the CDC doing what its purpose was, which was to plan for this. But as we know, it really looks like the CDC has spent 40 years, 50 years even, not planning for anything. The entire point of them was to prevent these sorts of things from happening, to see them before they get to our shores, and that once they get to our shores, to have plans in place to deal with them. And as we've seen during this pandemic, they did none of the prevention. They did none of the protection from keeping it off the shores. And when it did get here, they didn't have any plans ready to go. All the plans that we've initiated so far have all been new plans that were come up with at the time, There was nothing pre-existing. There was no pre-existing infrastructure. There was no pre-existing hierarchy of here's how you do this. Here's who reports to who. Here's how all the interagencies should link up together and be sharing information. There is none of that. Everybody's just making it up as they go along. And so I think that this Operation Overdrive is a great idea, and it's getting rid of some of that making it up as you go along now. It's trying to clear some of that away. But this is the sort of thing that could have been implemented much, much earlier. And it's something that could have been planned for a long time ago.
So I know as far as the military is concerned, that they have plans for dealing with pandemics and how it would affect the military and how our operations would change. But some bases failed to act because they were receiving information that it was just the flu, right? Military medical professionals were advising them that action wasn't necessary. That wasn't for every base. Some bases did react, but we also had our civilian leadership of the military saying this is no big deal, and then that caused a lag effect. I know the civilian leadership, the federal government, they didn't seem to have a plan, like you said, and what it could. They could be possibly related to the fact that they had shifted over the responsibilities of who deals with the federal pandemic response from one agency to another in the last couple of years, right? But that doesn't really. I mean, why would you get away if you must have had plans previously? Why wouldn't we have used them?
Well, what do you need? What do you need like another pandemic response team for? If we need a pandemic response team, then what does CDC do? I keep going back to this week after week after week. Is what is it that the CDC does? Because every time we say, hey, well, there's this thing, or somebody in the media says, well, there's this thing that Trump got rid of, or this or this other thing. It's like he got rid of it. It's like, well, yeah, but why wasn't the CDC doing it? If the CDC wasn't doing that, then what is it that the CDC does other than just spend money?
Apparently, is there a barrier to doing anything?
Yeah, I think that they're just like. I think they're just like a 3-letter agency, and like that's it. Like they just exist to take up 3 letters, and that's it.
Yeah. So I think the CDC, the big lesson here is that the CDC needs to be revamped entirely, because the only thing they've managed to do is to make progress more difficult and to shut out people from contributing to that progress. Trump's done a good job at opening up setting a precedent.
See you, Gray Apathy. Thanks for joining.
See you. Having industry, private labs and manufacturers able to be a part of the solution from the very beginning.
Well, and so we talked about this too. Is a lot of the regulation that is a barrier right now is stuff that is probably okay or somewhat acceptable during we'll call it a peacetime. A non-pandemic time. There's certain things that the military probably operates that are less efficient, or they do them in they have extra steps during peacetime. But you also have plans for wartime. There should be plans in the CDC and the FDA for wartime where, okay, normally we would do these extra steps, but we need a streamlined method for when something like this happens. The CDC and the FDA did not have that. They had to make it all up as they went along. This Operation Overdrive is a streamlined path to do these as quickly as possible because it's an emergency, because it's wartime. And it's really a dereliction again in what their purpose was, what their duty was to, it's fine if they want to have extra steps during, normal times that keeps everyone safe, supposedly. That's all fine and well. It's fine that they have extra regulations for that stuff. I don't think that we should be having I'm not one of those super libertarians that thinks the FDA has no purpose and everybody just needs to be, researching poisons so that they don't, kill themselves and they have to make their own decisions. I think that's absolutely a perfectly fine organization to have. And I think that the regulatory burden should be high for the FDA and anything that you're putting in your body. But again, during an emergency, there needs to be a slipstreamed path, a streamlined way of doing that. A wartime checklist that lets you skip steps. And that's what Operation Overdrive is doing. And I don't understand. I just don't understand why the CDC does not have stuff like that ready to go. I just don't understand. It's very predictable that something some kind of virus. I know you'll never know what the specifics are until it actually comes, but it's very predictable that a characteristic that it would have would be that it would spread very fast, and there wouldn't be it would be plausibly deadly, and there wouldn't be any defense against it. That
you know what is telling though? The only thing the CDC did do in advance was to create a bulwark of regulation that would make sure that they were the sole source and were required for dealing with a pandemic or medical crisis, that their labs had to be the ones testing it, that they had to be the ones that designed it, that it was all dependent on them and everyone else was locked out. That's what they spent their time doing, was justifying their job.
Yeah, they entrenched the gatekeeping. They entrenched it as deep as they could. Yep.
That was their preparation. It wasn't focusing on getting the best results for the country. It was maintaining the bureaucracy. Yeah. And it's funny how they managed to do it. And then the first thing they did, not the first thing they did, the first thing that Trump did to fix the problem was to undo all of their preparation.
Yeah, which is, again, this is back months ago now. Nobody's talking about testing anymore, really. But at the beginning of this, we couldn't get testing anywhere because all the tests had to go back to the lab in Georgia, the CDC lab. And there was only like a handful of them because the CDC had made sure that no one else was allowed, no other private labs were authorized to do coronavirus testing. During the pandemic. And, as Dyer just said, one of the first specific things that Trump did was they worked together to try to deregulate that, and they got the CDC, they forced them to lift those sanctions, the regulations between the CDC and the FDA that blocked private labs from doing that testing. Whereas what should have happened, again, during a peacetime footing, if the CDC wants to have all the lab work run through them, whatever. I don't. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I don't care. During a wartime footing, though, they need to have pre-existing protocols saying like, okay, again, it's predictable that we'll need more lab requirements than what we can host in Georgia. So maybe we should have a plan in place for how we would go about what would be the criteria that needs to be met, and how would we go about authorizing deregulation to allow private labs to do this lab work. They didn't have any of that stuff ready to go, and it took Trump to come in and tell them to do that when it's their job. Supposedly, it's the CDC's job to be preparing for these sorts of scenarios. And I think that's a very obvious step that would have needed to be done had they prepared for it. If you would have sat me down 3 years ago and said, well, Fox, what do you think that we would have needed for a pandemic? I'd say, well, what kind of pandemic? Like, I don't know, any pandemic. I probably would have eventually gotten around to thinking, wow, I bet you we would need a lot of lab capacity. Do we have a lot of lab capacity? And they would have said, no. Right now, the way everything's set up is that everything needs to run through the CDC lab. Be like, oh, okay, well, that's probably going to be a problem in a pandemic situation. I think it's very predictable that lab will be a bottleneck and slow our response time. So why don't we have a plan in place that makes sure that we get rid of that bottleneck as quick as possible? And the CDC did not do that. The FDA did not do that because we talked about this earlier, they've lost their mission. Their mission when they were created was to protect the country from pandemics. They've since, their mission has become keep the CDC going, keep the FDA going. Their mission is to perpetuate their mission. We saw that with the regulations, of making sure that the CDC was the gatekeeper on everything. I love this Operation Overdrive stuff. I think to a certain extent, there's a I can't believe I'm saying this. There's a certain beauty to the wastefulness of it, that they are just trying. They're going to run all of these candidates as though they are the winning. They are the winning lottery ticket, and they're going to be mass producing them immediately, even though they're probably going to have to throw it away. It's extremely wasteful. What's that?
It makes me cringe because I don't know. I'm sure you're aware of it, but there's a lot of promising, vaccines that look like they might work well, but that fail a lot, right? So you could have 30 attempts,
Yeah.
And they could all fail. And then think of the billions that could be spent,
Well, yeah, but we're printing it anyways. So the money really doesn't matter at this point. They might as well.
I'm still for this. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Here's the way I see it. Here's the way I see it. So each vaccine is a lottery ticket, right? So you don't know if you're going to win or not. What America is doing is we are in a position, for a lot of reasons, that some of them good, some of them bad. It doesn't matter though. We are in a position that we said, well, what if we just bought all the lottery tickets? Why don't we just buy all of them instead of picking one or two or trying to assist 3 or 4 over here or whatever, just, kind of grease the palms. Let's just buy out the whole lottery system. Let's buy out every single vaccine. And then we're guaranteed if there is a winner in there, we're going to get that winner because we bought every single one of them. I think that there's something... I think there's something like kind of elegant about that strategy. Again, extremely wasteful, but with purpose. But with the purpose of winning that lottery, not just wasteful for wastefulness' sake.
Right. I know there's a purpose to it. There's a benefit for what they're doing. It still makes me cringe a little bit. How much it's going to cost, how much is going to get thrown away. Those same resources are made to use the vaccines. There are limited resources. We were talking about just 2 weeks ago how we were having a shortage of some of the reagents needed.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's going to be a problem. But again, you got the federal government. It's different when you've got reagent supply chain issues with private companies. Right now that the government stepped in and said we are bankrolling this whole thing, I would suspect they'll have a lot less issue finding supply chains for those reagents. Now, some of those things are just limited resources. It doesn't matter if you've got $1 billion to buy it. Some of them, they're just, if there's none left, there's just none left. It doesn't matter who you are. But a lot of that stuff can be smoothed over if you take away a need to have a profit motive, which again, I'm saying these sorts of things because I think that, like the Manhattan Project that they keep kind of relating this to, the Manhattan Project, you don't get a nuclear bomb out of the private sector. There's no reason for it. You don't win World War II out of the private sector. You at a certain point, that magic bullet that finishes the whole thing off. Now you use the capitalism and the free market to support the whole thing, but that magic bullet needed a little bit of extra attempt to it that needed the government to kind of bankroll a bunch of bad ideas looking for that one winning ticket. And again, I say bad ideas after the fact, but it's ideas just saying, well, we need to try everything. We need a solution. We don't have time to try one thing at a time. We need to try all of it. And get to it as quick as possible. And this is one of those situations, again, an emergency situation where we're able to do that. I think it's a good thing. Yes, very wasteful. So Triumvirate says, you are trying to solve a problem, but the CDC knows that there's good money in job security and prolonging the problem. Yeah, the CDC doesn't want to let a good crisis go to waste either.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. And so freaking sad.
Yeah. Right. I hope this works. I really do. I think it'd be a good testament.
I hope everyone hopes it works. Everyone's hoping that the very first attempt is successful. I don't know any asshole that'd be opposed to it.
Well, you don't personally know anybody in the media, then, do you?
Not personally.
Yep.
Okay. Jeez.
Alrighty.
Why do you got reality in this conversation?
What's that?
Why do you got to bring reality into this conversation?
I know, right? Alrighty. Well, hopefully they figure something out. All right. Next story is out of order. Did I get this? I must have got this out of order. All right. Women's soccer is sued for gender discrimination. My
Women
goodness.
playing sports? What? Just
Okay.
kidding.
Yeah, so it sounds so they're losing out on the dictatorship. They're losing out on soccer. It's just, man, it's awful year for them. Last year we did a story about U.S. women's national soccer team that cried sexism and patriarchy because the women's league players were being paid less than the men. As you may remember, they attempted to sue their league for discrimination. 1 year later, and a judge has finally ruled on their case. Their case was thrown out as being completely without merit. The presiding judge wrote in the decision, the women's national team players had chosen to forego higher bonuses for benefits such as greater base compensation in return for more benefits. So yeah, so they were basically, I assume they have something that's analogous to a union, or they were, something that's sort of a...
Yes.
Yeah, so they were asked, well, how do you want to get paid? You guys can get paid on bonuses, but those are going to vary back and forth depending on if you guys are making money, or you can have more of a stable pay and better healthcare and all this sort of stuff too. But you're not going to get those bonuses because it's got to be one or the other.
Right. So basically, they make vastly less money. So if they go off of percentage of a larger percentage haul of what's made, then instead of, which is going to vary a lot based on any given game having lots of people viewing it or not, or any year's contract based off of what ad revenue comes, right? They're far less likely to get good ad revenue, which is where they're getting a lot of the money from, is from deals with TV studios. So it's better for them to have the steady expected income. So they decided that's what they wanted. They didn't want the deal that the men had negotiated for, and that was the precedent. They didn't want that.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, too, they were making less than the men, but like pretty
higher percentage.
They were getting like not too far away from them in raw dollars count, but they also were taking in, again, like you said, far less ad revenue and spectator revenue from people wanting to come see the games because nobody wants to go see their games. And then also, I think that their season was as much as half the number of games as the men. I seem to remember that as being one of the things too. And so they were trying to say, well, yeah, I mean, basically it would have ended up being that they'd be getting paid double what the men were getting paid relative to what their game schedule was.
Right. And then we're going to get into it later, but for vastly less money earned by the actual studio.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't be fair by any metric. In any case, the players had in fact rejected the pay structure that the men's league players negotiated, as it was based on revenue earned by the games, and as less people pay to watch the women play, their pay would have been less. You can't reject the same collective bargaining agreement as the men and then complain that there is a disparity.
This kind of reminds me of analysis I was doing for my company this week. We have another company that we're sending product to, and some of their locations are very near to us, and some of them are very, very far away from us. And they wanted the freight cost to be the exact same no matter where it was being sent to. So like, okay, that's fine, but like your closer ones, you're going to be getting overcharged for freight, and your far away ones are going to be getting undercharged for freight. It'll be even for you, but just like that's how it'll work. The near routes will subsidize the far away routes. And that's what they wanted. We offered them, well, you could do dynamic routing where, if you have a really long route, you're going to have to pay a lot for it, but if you have a really short route, you're just going to get a little bit. You're only going to have to get charged a little bit for it. But they want to do the level one, which is what it sounds like the girls wanted. The girls wanted a level salary instead of just kind of rolling the dice on whether or not it was going to be a big one or a little one that year. And so this company that we had this deal with, where we were level loading their route costing, they all of a sudden they realized, like, well, hey, our short routes, we're paying too much for that. We don't want to pay that much for it. And we said, well, yeah, but that wasn't the deal. Like, the deal was that those short routes were going to cost you more than what they would cost if we were just charging for that route by itself. But that route's subsidizing the long routes. They're like, well, yeah, but we don't want to pay that much for that one. We're like, okay, so do you want to go back to the dynamic routing? Like, no, the dynamic route costing? Like, well, no. Like, well, so you want the long routes to cost the same as the short routes, and you want the short routes to cost even less than what they do now? Yes. They just wanted to have it both ways, where they
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, they wanted stability and they wanted the benefit of instability. I was like, you can't have both. You can either have it level and you're protected from that ups and downs, or you can ride the roller coaster and just roll the dice as to where you're going to land at. But you can't have it level on the bad side and have it go up with the good side. That's not fair. Like, you have to pick one or the other. And it sounds like what the girls wanted to do. They didn't want to ride the roller coaster as to whether or not they're going to get bonuses because fans showed up or didn't show up. They wanted more stability by getting leveled out base salary. But now after they got that level-based salary, they're like, well, we still want the benefit of the high end of that. Well, you gotta be able to take on the low end of that. Well, no. We don't want the low end. We want that to be stabilized. You can't have both. You have to pick. You cannot have both.
And so the point of this is it was clearly a very unreasonable demand based on them misrepresenting what they'd actually had asked for in their pay. Because it benefited them most. It was better pay than the men's deal if they'd taken the men's deal.
Mm-hmm. Is that my part?
Yep.
Oh. The main reason women's soccer players aren't paid as much as men is due to the fact that they are simply less interesting to watch. Read that slightly differently than how you wrote it, but I still think it's true.
Not what I wrote.
and the fact that they are far less interesting and less athletically talented, that's just harsh writing there. That factors into their pay. The fact that they are less athletically talented factors into their pay.
Right.
The lower interest results in less money brought in from advertisers, and revenue in general, less revenue in general to the Fédération Internationale de Football Association. Apparently, their International Football Association is French. On Fox Sports Channel, women's soccer brought in about 63,000 viewers. Well, the men's team got 240,000 viewers. There is a few less for the women there, probably because they are less talented.
Damn. So
brutal.
I know, brutal. The women are the women bring in less money, but are actually paid a higher percentage. Like we said earlier, the men are paid 9% of revenues, and women are paid 13% collectively. And women's soccer brought in about $17 million in ad sponsorship from Fox Sports, while men's in 2014 brought in $529 million in ad revenue. So, if you help your company earn $17 million, and then some other guy, you could say girl, even doesn't matter. If some other person earns their company $529 million, do you think that your work has the same value as their work? It doesn't matter how good you are at your job. The product you produced was less valuable, right? Now, imagine Fox and I both are really good engineers, right? And we work for different companies that have different missions, different products. And his product is more valuable when they sell it, and mine is cheap. Doesn't matter how good we are as engineers. Doesn't matter I could do his job or not. What I'm producing is less valuable. I'm sorry. Your gameplay, your entire league produces a product that is not in demand. The value of your work, because of what you are producing, is less valuable on the market. It's not a criticism of you as a person or your skill from me. I mean, Fox will criticize your skill.
I think the engineering analogy is really what the writing for the show, that your engineering skills are just less valuable than mine. You produce a lower quality product that is not in demand.
Ouch.
Right in the jugular. All right.
You get the analogy.
Yes, I do.
Right?
Yes.
So hopefully they get it. I think this is just them trying to get attention and using the political pressure to try to get a better deal in their bargaining.
Yeah,
honestly.
it's exactly. It's got nothing to do with what's fair. It's got to do with they're trying to capitalize on momentum from social movements out in the world, with the way the media works. The way politicians are working, trying to get that attention and trying to guilt trip their company into paying them more is basically what's happening. But yeah, it's not because they're more valuable.
No, and for me, it wasn't a criticism of them as a person. Jeez, you're mean.
So some of that comes from when the story was breaking last year. One of my best friends is he's an American football hooligan. So he's really into soccer, and I was asking him, I was like, okay, like I don't like school me on this because like he's really into soccer. He knows everything about it. I was like, all right, explain to me this situation. He's like, okay, like here it is. Like, and he was explaining all this stuff. He goes, yeah, like the men's is just far more valuable from an advertising standpoint, far more valuable from a spectator standpoint. The women, and again, I believe he was the one that told me about the schedule. The schedule is halved for women. The men are playing twice as many games, and it's just absolutely outrageous that if the women were making what the men were making at a rate, what is your actual work product output, as you were saying, what is the value of what the men are selling versus what the value of the women are selling? The women are far, far overpaid already as compared to the men. If they really wanted to see, the problem is they want to make the same, real amount as what the men make. They don't want to make the same percentage, which is, that would be actually fair. Is if you bring in $1, your profit on that is 10 cents, let's say. So let's say the men are making 10 cents on every dollar they're bringing in. The women are also making 10 cents on every dollar they're bringing in. They're just bringing in far less dollars. And so they see the men raking in billions of dollars, and they're like, well, we want billions of dollars too. It's like, well, yeah, but you didn't even rake in $1 billion. You only raked in $1 million. So you can't have that. I personally, I kind of like watching the SJW organizations propose policies that would result in the collapse of the organization that they are a part of. And so I think it would be kind of a funny thing. And I almost ironically support them in their mission because this would collapse the entirety of women's soccer. They would be able to do this for 2 or 3 years and they would declare bankruptcy, especially now because there's not spectators for anything anymore. They're losing that too. I mean, they should do it. They should push for it. They should go on strike. The Women's Soccer Association should go all in on it. Pay them all the money.
We're in full support, ladies.
Yeah, I'm accelerationed on this. So I'm accelerationist on this. Yeah. So do that, and then within the next 3 years, probably the next year and a half because of the virus, we will not have to hear from women's soccer ever again because there will be no women's soccer.
It's
just funny. Like that's what SJWs do. They just eat their organizations from the inside out, and every time.
Name one organization that's benefited from SJW ideology. I can't think of one.
You see this in the media all the time. You got all these journalists, these SJW journalists, wanting more and more money, and they keep collapsing their companies and they keep getting laid off. It's hilarious. That's the same thing these soccer players are going to do. They're going to end up demanding more money. Their company is going to do it, and then their company is going to have to go bankrupt and fire them all, and it's just
it's going to be hilarious.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I've got no dog in the fight for women's soccer. If it disappears from the world, I don't think I just don't think that's going to be a big loss to humanity, one way or the other. Same thing with Vox and all these media organizations. They got to lay off 500 journalists. I don't think it's any big loss for humanity. And so I say go for it. Let them do it. If they want to destroy their organization, that's on them. Do it. I think it's funny.
It's so nice of you to call them journalists. They're definitely not.
Yes. Alrighty. Next story. Ready? Are you ready?
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. Okay.
Yeah, it's a short one.
Yeah, Biden's a weirdo. Christopher Steele throws Hillary Clinton and Susan Rice under the bus. Oh man.
Not literally, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was got my hopes up. Then you've dashed them. The Russian collusion narrative, the false story, was based on false opposition research paid for by a rival party, which was the Democrats, that the intel agencies and the deep state actors have also used. It was also partially funded by the FBI. The Russian story, it just doesn't make sense. So it's just all the same players over and over and over again. it's such poorly written fiction. I don't know. It baffles me every time we have to talk about it, because I always know, like, okay, we have to explain the context for it. And then every time you try to explain the context for anything to do with the Russian narrative, you keep hitting up against this wall that it's impossible to explain the context, because it's all based on things that don't actually have a coherent narrative to them. They don't make sense because they're not true. And the effort of trying to put them in context doesn't work because it's just not possible. It's just every time we come up against this, I always have that problem. We're like, okay, how do I explain that this makes in a way that makes sense? And you can't explain it in a way that makes sense because it doesn't make sense. Anyway, so the Russian collusion narrative, it's based on the Steele dossier. The Steele dossier was started by the Clinton campaign. It was partially paid for by the FBI. It was partially paid for by some of the Republicans. It was partially paid for by Clinton Foundation, and then McCain had shopped it around to the FBI and other intel agencies and around Congress. That was a document that got around. There was a lot of greasy paws on there, a lot of money flowing into it. And so they used that document. The deep state actors and the intel agencies used that document in conjunction with the Democrat leaders of Congress to conduct possibly the greatest hoax in U.S. history. We've gone over this saga and its players many times and gone crazy in the attempt. This week, new evidence has come out about who directed and knew about the Russian dossier, and it comes from the person who created the dossier, that British spy, Christopher Steele, which is a hell of a name for a spy. I mean, that is just... Yeah, he was destined to become a spy. Your last name's Steele. I mean, regardless of, like, what kind of person he is, like, he's got a cool name that matches his occupation, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I met a Sergeant Steele once, and the first thing I said to him was, you joined the right job.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway, so Christopher Steele was recently questioned under oath in a UK court related to a court case where he was being sued by 3 Russian businessmen that he had mentioned in the dossier. Apparently, Trump and Mr. Page weren't the only ones lied about. When questioned about the dossier, Steele said that Hillary Clinton and her campaign were completely aware of his work on the dossier, as they were the ones funding it. This now verifies Hillary was involved in the hoax. We already knew it, but it is more evidence towards that. It also means that she was aware that Steele was feeding this information to the intel agencies and the media.
Of course she was. Why wouldn't she be? Yes, Shadow Wolf, every day that happens. Steele also said that Obama's national security advisor, Susan Rice, was also personally aware of what he was doing, as he had briefed her on his actions. You know, having the document be called the Steele dossier, you think that we may have heard from Steele at some point before now during the 18 hearings that have taken place during all the investigations and the Mueller report and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's funny. The Mueller report barely even realized that the Steele dossier existed. Barely acknowledged that. Yeah, it might have been interesting. I bet you Steele knew all of these things that he, knew back then. I bet you he also knew them during the interceding 3 years when all these investigations were taking place. Maybe somebody could have asked him. That would have been convenient. That would have been interesting. Maybe it would have been interesting to see him on the on those Senate hearings, the Senate and the House hearings during impeachment. That would have been a sight to see.
Yeah, unlikely though.
Clearly. So yeah, this in conjunction with the the Flynn revelations and the continuing Flynn revelations, everybody kind of forgot because of the coronavirus. After the Mueller report came out and during the Ukraine investigations and impeachment stuff, the DOJ, AG Barr, had been spinning up all of these investigations into the investigators as to what the hell happened during the Mueller investigation and all of the stuff going on at the Crossfire Hurricane operation that led to the Mueller investigation. All of that stuff looked real sketchy, and AG Barr had been doing a lot of effort to get that investigated, to figure out what the hell was going on when that happened. And there was we remember back in December, we had the Horowitz report. There was another report from somebody else that was looking at what the FBI was doing. I forget what his name was. But they're starting to find a lot of this, these continuous mistakes and that whole Crossfire Hurricane, the whole idea of the Mueller report and the Russian collusion was all falling apart very quickly. And those investigations into the investigators, those are still going on, and they've been going on during the coronavirus. We just hadn't really heard about them. But it sounds like, I guess in the last couple of weeks here, a lot of these are starting to come to a conclusion all at the same time. We're getting all these Flynn revelations about how egregiously the FBI conducted itself trying to get him to lie and entrap him. We're getting some of this other stuff, investigation around the Steele dossier. I know that there's some other stuff that's supposedly coming out soon too. So I think this could be, had this not been a pandemic time period, certainly these would be some of our biggest stories that we'd be covering. Some of the most interesting stories would be these. This would have been kind of the reversal of all of the impeachment investigations. It would have been the revelations about just how abusively the establishment, the deep state, had abused its power to try to swing an election, to try to stop a president that was rightfully elected. So, that's where a lot of stuff is coming from, and it's it kind of seems like out of the blue. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about the Steele dossier. I've been locked in my house for 3 months and told I'm going to die if I go outside. You kind of forgot about some of this stuff here. It also feels like it was so long ago, but it is starting to come out now. It was and is still working in the background, and I hope that this is just kind of the first bit of what are some pretty major revelations. And I hope, as we said for Flynn, I hope some people start getting held to account. If there's people, these big names are aware of these things, are aware that this is the sort of stuff that was going on, and they've claimed that they've lied, that they didn't know. They said that they didn't know. They said that they weren't involved. And them being involved makes it, by definition, a partisan issue. And if it's true, well, now that we know that it's true, that you've got these partisan actors, these very public, infamous partisan figures that are involved deeply with the very, very powerful intelligence apparatus that is capable of destroying any general it happens to set its sights on, capable of handcuffing an elected president. Handcuffing in the metaphoric sense, although they are trying to do it literally. That they're using those tools of power in a clearly partisan way, and that it's now becoming clear. We'd assumed, but it's now becoming proven that they are having these well-known partisan public figures that are helping coordinate all of this stuff. That is a egregious abuse of power that we are just getting to the iceberg of, just getting to the very tip of. And again, there's a lot of stuff. I get this a lot where I'll see some of these revelations come out, and they're like, "Oh, wow, we found out this big thing, this big deal that we knew the FBI was lying, or we knew Hillary was involved, or whatever." I see some of that stuff, and I'm like, "Yeah, I knew that. Why is this news?" And I realize, oh yeah, it's stuff that we've theorized. It's stuff that seems pretty obvious, but we're now getting a lot of evidence that proves these theories and proves these things that look rather obvious. And it was like, oh well, that's just one too many coincidences for me. And this proves that they weren't just coincidences. It was, it was deliberate action. It was deliberate partisan action.
Correct. And I think this is a reason why, we should be investigating more into how much this investigation was being treated. Because think about it. We had, what's his name? Comey. Mm-hmm. At the same time as he was dealing with the other well, that's off topic. Comey let Hillary off for her misdeeds with the emails, right? Destroying evidence and the leaking of unintentionally or intentionally secret information.
Possibly getting all of our Chinese agents that could have warned us about coronavirus killed, possibly.
Yeah, that too. The FBI, the same investigators that were investigating her and let her go, were the ones who went on a multi-year vendetta against Trump with zero evidence. We have a lot of evidence that what Hillary did. We actually have an admission from the investigators that she actually did break these.
Well, we have an admission from Comey that she broke it, and he just decided that they weren't going to prosecute.
Exactly. So we know she committed crimes and was not held to account. The same investigators are the ones investigating Trump when they committed no crime, and they were dogged at trying to not only find a crime to justify the investigation, but they also destroyed people's lives in the process. That was completely immoral and unnecessary. And then we now know that the investigation that they were working on, that that they were investigating, was predicated on information directed by and paid for by the person, by Hillary, his competitor, who also had committed crimes. This seems dirty to the deepest level.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and again, this is maybe this was our theme tonight: is the Republican. Well, I'll say Republicans. The right, the libertarian, the conservative side, the right side, the constitutionalist side. We want a government that is safe, no matter. It doesn't matter if our adversaries get power. It's still safe to us. You guys know what I mean by safe. It's not going to come by and take you away in the dead of night. The Democrats want a government that is, when they get power, it's impossible for the opposition to get power. And this is one of those things, again. So they've set up a government where it's very weak on Hillary. It doesn't hold her to account, but it sure as hell sends Trump into the pavement. Hillary, she wants to win an election, and the government is set up in a way that is friendly to her winning the election and is working its damnedest to try to make sure that Trump can't win. And so that would be, from my perspective, the government is currently, if I was a Democrat, I would realize, well, man, if that government were to suddenly get in the hands of the Republicans, that'd be pretty dangerous for us. But they never anticipate that. They're always thinking, well, we've got so much power now, we can keep the conservatives from getting power. We can keep constitutionalists from getting power. Whereas, again, like I said, I'd much prefer a setup that is safe no matter who gets power.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people, a lot of activists, they think, oh, if only I could do this thing, if I had all this power, I could fix the world, right? Because all my opinions are the right ones. And they never think about the long-term ramifications of that. Any power you give yourself to fix the world will be given to the next tyrant.
Yep.
So you need to find a way where you are maintaining accountability and freedom and still trying to make a positive effect on the world. Any case, our next story?
Yes. Which is...
Okay, this is a short one.
Yes.
So, defensive use of a firearm. This is for you, Triumvirate. So, just yesterday on May 1st, a man in Somerville, Alaska, was jumped by a group of men. Wasn't really clear what the motive was. Just a bunch of guys tried to attack him. And he was able to defend himself from robbery, serious injury, or possible death. Don't know what their intent was. He pulled out his legally owned concealed carry firearm and fired one time at the bad guys and missed completely. Shot some poor guy's car tire. But the gunshot did scare off all the people who were trying to attack him. So he is now safe, and this goes to show you have to be a great shot to save your life with a gun.
Yes.
How do you miss a point blank? I don't know.
Well, maybe that's one of those examples too, where I mean he didn't actually use it on them, not necessarily on purpose, but is somewhere between brandishing a firearm and using the firearm. And we always talk with the one of the biggest missing numbers from the defensive use of a firearm is the brandishing, because the brandishing is typically enough to get someone who's coming after you to stop coming after you. You brandish the gun, they know what's about to happen. They're saying, okay, my bad. I'm gonna walk away now. And typically stuff like that's not going to be as heavily reported, or if it is reported, it's not going to be a news story. It's not a news story that someone brandished a gun and robber just walked away. It's more of a news story when there's a shot fired. So those kinds of numbers are actually, the defensive use of a firearm number far exceeds the deaths by firearm, even if you include suicides and gang violence. But that number is even sandbagged. It should actually be a lot higher if it did include just brandishing the firearm, which again, this was one of those instances where it was enough. It was somewhere between a brandishing and a usage of the firearm, and it was enough closer to the using the firearm that was actually reported on. And so I guess we got to see that this time. But just remember that too, that those numbers are still sandbagged. They're actually a lot higher.
Yes. I had someone on a video that I made a long time ago about defensive use of a firearm. What?
Triumvirate says the quantum tunneling, the bullet has a 0.00001% chance of just popping out of existence. It also has the same percent chance of just like popping into that guy's head. Just like your quantum gun has a certain chance of it. Just you don't even have to fire it; it just pops into the robber's head. It also has the same chance of just firing a robber. Like a robber will come out of the barrel and rob you. So it's
that's why we need to restrict gun ownership.
Yeah, quantum guns are pretty dangerous. So you gotta watch out for that stuff. Anything could happen.
Oh my god!
The quantum gun shoots half dead cats.
No, it's not half the cat. It's both in the state of being dead and alive at the same time. Until it hits you, in which case you know for whether it is which one.
This is totally off topic, but I heard recently that I think this was the end of the show. The Schrodinger's cat thought experiment that Schrodinger tried to use to describe quantum physics. Everybody uses that as like, oh man, like quantum physics is crazy. Like there's this thought experiment. The cat would be like alive and dead at the same time because it's inside the box. You can't see it till you observe it, and what is apparently that's like a heresy. Like the allegedly the real story is that Schrodinger put that thought experiment together because he wanted to show that his equations were so absurd they couldn't possibly be right. He's like, no, this isn't like a cool crazy thing that came out of quantum physics. He's like, this must mean that it's wrong. Like there must be something that we're missing. And so he was using that as again, I don't know. I don't have this confirmed. This is just what I heard. But in theory, that story is actually about why quantum physics is not the accurate representation of the universe, because you get into these paradoxes of dead and alive cats, which is just absurd and can't possibly be true. And so there must be something missing from the quantum physics equations.
Huh.
Yes. That was more of a me talking to Triumvirate rather than you.
No, that's actually really funny, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We've all gotten that wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things, yeah.
Can you imagine being a scientist who, everyone has misunderstood your work since the beginning of time?
Yes.
That must be frustrating.
Timberwolf, what about a sword that fires guns? You ever think of that? Dyer, what did you just imagine in your head when I said a sword that fires guns? Like, explain to me the picture in your head.
It would have to be a very large sword with a barrel at the top, and it has a magazine full of guns.
Not a clip of guns? What if it had a magazine of clips?
That's absurd.
I want an AR modification it's a magazine with clips. Like you put clips into a magazine. That would be the best gun ever. It would actually be a clip-a-zine. Someone please make a clip-a-zine. Oh god, I need that in my life.
That's evil, and you're evil for suggesting it.
I don't know. They wouldn't be able to make it illegal, would they? I think it'd be
so.
It'd be Schrodinger's gun clip.
Is it a clip?
I don't know. Sure? Well, every other time you say it, you have to switch. So it'd be Schrodinger's magazine, Schrodinger's clip.
I think you're doing it because you hate me.
Schrodinger's bullet holster. How about that? Okay. That's what I'm going to call it, so I don't have to like try to remember if it's a clip or a magazine. I'm just going to be like, it's a bullet holster. The bullet holder thing.
Okay. Well.
It's that time of the show.
All right. Well, I need to share the chest, I assume.
Sure. Tremor says, your description of the sword that fires guns with a magazine full of clips is like an AOC parody. Yeah, so so your sword that fires guns, it's what fires guns that use magazines, but the sword is filled with a clip of guns that have magazines in them. Someone draw that for me, and we'll commission it.
Okay, the chest is almost shared. Good job, Triumvirate, Shadow Wolf, Star Shadow, Timberwolf, all good people, all deserving. All right, well, thank you guys for another wonderful show. We'll see you guys, because the show is only wonderful because of you guys. We suck. But we'll see you guys on Wednesday for a game stream, possibly earlier if we just get a feeling to do something extra. All right. Thank you guys. Direwolf out.
Tv's